out there. I can feel you now. The lies, the manipulation, the suppression of information. I know you're aware. Aware of us. Aware of great changes. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to convince you. I came here to share my great discoveries. I came here to ask fundamentally important questions and challenge the status quo. When I hang up this phone, I'm going to show all these people the world they don't want you to see. I'm going to show you a world without limits, without controls, a new earth governed by self-empowerment, sovereignty, community, dignity, where everything you can imagine is possible.
There's something we're not being told here. There's something that is known more worldwide than we believe. And it's right in front of us.
There was a worldwide grid of pyramids over 10,000 years ago. And these pyramids were ancient power plants, producing free, clean, environmentally safe energy that we could power cities with.
All these ancient ruins were placed on vortex points.
Why would you have similarly constructed pyramids on one side of the planet and eerily similar in engineering in Mesoamerica?
Wherever there are sacred sites, native peoples know.
It happened one day when I was riding on a school bus, gazing out the window. I had a vision of a whirlpool pattern, and I just knew that the flow of energy I was seeing was the same in an atom as in our entire solar system. I felt deeply that I, too, was somehow made of that same pattern. This vision was what originally got me into science, into trying to figure out how the universe works and how we humans fit into the overall pattern of life energy. Years later, I learned that the pattern I saw is known by some in the scientific world. When energy is released in the universe, there are little packets of wholeness that emerge. This pattern actually tells us a lot about how life evolves. Considering the enduring wonders of creation throughout the universe, and how unsustainable so many of our human systems are, I figured learning how the universe creates and sustains life would actually be quite useful. Each of these little packets of wholeness, called a quantum, is made out of its surroundings, but is distinct within it, like a whirlpool in water. These packets are always the same pattern, no matter what size, and they are surprisingly relevant to issues as seemingly disconnected as the wars in the Middle East, the global financial collapse, and how to achieve justice for everyone. Mathematicians call this pattern the torus.
Well, actually, let me grab the ring magnet and stick it underneath.
The universe is really that simple. The geometry of magnetism is toroidal.
People that still say, well, there's no proof of this being ancient advanced technology, we can put that argument to rest very quickly, because in 2013 I took one of our sacred stones, what we call the Taurus stones, to Nassim Haramein at the Resonance Project in Hawaii. We knew that it was a powerful energy device, but we didn't know how powerful it was. We were measuring very powerful energy fields coming out of it, and already I was suspecting that it was a resonance generator that was generating energy. What we found is that in Doha, while flying a Qatar Airlines, they pulled my bag off the plane and they stopped, prevented the airplane from taking off, because that stone that was in my bag crashed the TSA security system, and they had no idea what happened. While my bag was going through the scanning, it must have sent a pulse or a frequency into the center of the stone, and that's seemingly how these stones work. When you put a frequency into it, it amplifies that frequency. It's very exciting that we're starting to really understand how this ancient silicon-based technology, remember, this is what we're dealing with, silicon-based technology, because the stone is predominantly silicon. This toroid stone crashed the TSA security system, probably because they put one of the frequencies that they scan your bag with, and right into the middle. It created a pulse that went out and shut down the entire security computer system.
The energy in a torus flows in through one end, circulates around the center, and exits out the other side. It's balanced, self-regulating, and always whole.
Evolution means to unfold, to roll out. So the question is, what is the universe rolling out? And what the universe is rolling out is self-organizing systems, and you can see this at every scale. A self-organizing system is a technical term for just a system getting a hold of itself, knowing itself, essentially. And if we go to nature, we can look at and we can see these self-organizing forms throughout. We can see it in the cross-section of an orange, the cross-section of an apple. We can see it in the dynamic nature of a tornado. We can see it in the magnetic field around the Earth, a similar magnetic field around an individual. We can see it in the structure of an entire whirlpool galaxy. We can see it in the structure of a small atom. At every scale, throughout its entire history, the universe has one single project. It's growing toruses.
The torus is like the breath of the universe. It's the form that the flow of energy takes at every scale of existence. But there's also an underlying structure in how the flow fits together, sort of like a skeleton. It's called the vector equilibrium, a term coined by one of the 20th century's greatest thinkers, Buckminster Fuller. Inspired by Fuller's visionary work, I spent decades researching the dynamics of the vector equilibrium and the torus. I became so excited by the potential of the toroidal energy form that in 1997 I co-founded a multidisciplinary think tank called the Sequoia Symposium to study the pattern and explore its applications. Our collected research convinced me that the torus and the vector equilibrium are primary patterns, fundamental to the creation of the universe at all scales. At the Sequoia Symposium gatherings, I learned of inventors who claimed they were using the torus dynamic as the basis for devices that generated energy without combustion. This revolutionary development, accessing what's sometimes called zero point or radiant or free energy, is now being called most simply new energy technology.
What happens when you have something that would fit on this table and it will run your house? Pulling energy from the quantum vacuum or the zero-point energy field. You don't need utilities. J.P. Morgan famously was reported to have said to Nikola Tesla, when he had a car that had a little antenna on it that was running around where the batteries were charging themselves. J.P. Morgan said, if we can't put a meter on it, we don't want it. Everything we're using is run on a metered linear energy source, even solar and wind. If you begin to talk about the phenomena of new energy, free energy, anti-gravity, UFOs, you're stepping into an area that is the most sensitive, compartmented intelligence in the history of the United States. First, I want to give you sort of the big picture. And the big picture is that we haven't needed fossil fuels since about 100 years ago. 100 years of really advanced physics, which weren't that well understood 100 years ago in terms of very high voltage systems at certain resonant high hertz, they call it, cycles per second, would result in this excess power. And it was observed by Faraday, and it was observed by Tesla, and it was observed by many others, and said, where is this coming from? Professor Dirac, D-I-R-A-C, said, well, he called it the Dirac Sea. And of course, Tesla called it the ocean of infinite energy. And it's been called various things. The modern term is the zero-point energy field. If you create this kind of vector into the zero-point energy field, and you create a certain counter-rotating vortex, let's call it, which is almost a Sufi-like phenomenon, you get what's called lift, and you get a phenomenon that's known as electromagnetogravitics. Now, the pop culture would call it anti-gravity, which is really not correct. Now, in the early days, let's go back to the time of Tesla, they were observing with usually DC power systems, direct current, as opposed to alternating current, which we use in our homes, which Nikola Tesla invented or came up with. That would have this effect where a certain amount of energy would go into a system, more would come out. It wasn't really accepted until Dr. Casimir, a physicist named Casimir, and the Casimir effect, where this was published in mainstream physics journals, by the way, proved that there was this zero-point energy field, that there was this energy that was left even after you cooled down all the atoms and all the activity in the universe down to absolute zero, which is a specific temperature. And there's still this energy there. And that zero-point energy field, as it turns out, is embedded everywhere in space, not outer space, here in this room. So that every cubic centimeter of space in this room, for example, has enough power to run at least the United States for a day, a cubic centimeter. So it's an enormous field of energy. So running our planet on this energy field would be like taking a thimble out of the Great Lakes or something of water. It's a trivia, it's a rounding error.
We need to collectively now engage in envisioning that new paradigm. How is it going to look? How is it going to feel? This is what today is about. This is what the entire movement that we've collectively been envisioning is about. A world beyond the time and money and fear. The world seems to be in a different place right now, and it's connected to the collective consciousness. You being here are the vital component. You are the protectorate. You are the living, sentient guardians. We've sat down with heads of state, with energy ministers, finance ministers, and pretty powerful people in the military-industrial complex. These are not people who want to co-opt the technology. These are people who want to protect us getting the technology into the market, because they also know that this here represents the end to war, disease, and poverty, one way or the other.
We are partnering with Sacha and Humanitad in developing the Cutie Pie power technology. We've had 10 years experience in transmitting energy and information using longitudinal waves, and we have a background of dealing with some of the smartest guys on the planet. Cutie Pie will be able to run houses, cars, boats, and planes. We're using nature as a basis for what we're doing here. So we have vortex technology involved and vibration. So spin and vibration are two constants in nature, and we're trying to not violate natural laws. Tesla's work in longitudinal waves is more important to us than what he did with alternating current, since that's the basis behind what we're doing. We're currently fine-tuning our prototype, then we'll convert everything over into a solid state, then we'll go to manufacturing and distribution after that.
Here's your typical street in your neighborhood, anywhere in the world. And as we bring these technologies out, the grid comes down. We don't need it anymore. When there's a snowstorm or hurricane or whatever, you don't lose power because you're not dependent on a grid that's going to be torn down by ice and snow and wind. You don't need wires. And all these wires, the clutter of wires, you don't need them because every device will have its own source of energy. This could have been done decades ago. As we bring these out, all these freeways will be replaced. All the lines and power lines will go away. We can float above the surface. And in every city in the world, we're going to see this transformation. Every village in the world. And then we have these cities, eventually where you're just floating, there are guided pathways, the ground is pristine, and then we're going out into space. So everyone remember where our destiny is. Our destiny is not just Earth, it's the whole cosmos. How is that going to be possible? The only way we're allowed to go outside our solar system is if we become a peaceful civilization. Otherwise, it's locked down. We are considered a planet that is dangerous and armed.
Technologies like this and countless others will never see the light of day without a radically new strategy. Dr. Greer is preparing to launch a multi-centered, state-of-the-art research and development lab that will develop zero-point energy technology, live streaming 24/7 for security and transparency. All research results, data, and plans would be released to the world open source, freely available to the public and the scientific community. This will require broad public support to make this a reality. With this strategy, zero-point energy is achievable, but it is only half of what has been suppressed.
We're getting very close to rediscovering some of the things that our ancient ancestors were up to. There's a laboratory right now in the Maldives that's been building prototypes using these technological principles, which are based on implosion rather than explosion. And the inspiration for this...
Tesla's ideas are part of it, I think you mentioned.
Tesla's ideas are very much a part of it.
I think the key thing is we're looking at technologies that are not the same as ours.
Yes.
And that's partly why archaeologists can't see them, because they're looking for us in the past, and they're not open to the possibility that there are whole other kinds of technology that could be used.
Right.
I always go back to the ancient Egyptian traditions that speak of priests chanting as these huge blocks were lifted into the air. Were they using some kind of sound effect that was able to manipulate matter? We know that sound can manipulate matter, as a matter of fact. People who are working on a whole alternative path of technology, and maybe that's a rediscovery of the kind of technologies that were used by a lost civilization.
Through this technology, they're able to move stones or cut stones or all the above?
All the above.
And even transport them?
This is diagramming all the frequencies of the elements and what their vibrational frequencies are and the numbers that measure those frequencies. And they're all the numbers we get from looking at these ancient traditions that recur over and over and over again. And in order to avoid the kinds of fate that befell Tesla and Reich, Robert Oppenheimer, Victor Schauberger, and so many others that were working in these fields, all kind of converging on this same insight. It's been conducted in secret. The laboratory has been, that they've been developing this is in the Maldives, so that it's been immune from government interference. And now I think it's about ready to go the next. And Mazda, the car manufacturer in Japan, is getting ready to do a $25 million testing of some of these prototypes that they believe they can retrofit internal combustion engines with. And there's over 100, they've developed over 100 patents on some of this stuff. And it's amazing.
And what would be the fuel?
Plasmoids. Plasmoids, as it says here, are donut or toroidal-shaped clusters of net protons or net electrons that once captured and placed into a toroidal orbit are capable of absorbing, storing, and releasing enormous amounts of energy.
Each one of us is very invested in the world as it is. We've built careers, relationships, and goals based on a world that doesn't include ETs and anti-gravity and free energy and healing devices and all this cool, abundant stuff. And so we need to understand and really know if we are ready for that investment to be disrupted. So one of the most powerful things that any of us can do is to look in our own hearts, imagine the world that could be, and ask ourselves, are we ready for that? If the answer is yes, then hold that readiness in your heart in all the excitement that it's due. If the answer is no, if there are some lingering doubts or fears or concerns, then go into that. Follow that. That's an important thread that you can follow back to something inside of you that needs attention. It's that obstacle that may be keeping us from living in this new world.